But let's get into game number 1 here and enjoy some hot PvP action here. As spawning in the lower right-hand corner of Hard Lead, we have Nightmare. In the blue, his opponent in the upper left. In the red, it is none other than Stats. This is really weird. The whoosh sound effect is coming out of my speakers that's hooked up to my computer instead of coming out of my headphones. I know why this is. It's just really funny. It shouldn't affect anything for you guys because the sound I hear is not the same sound you guys hear. But it's because I opened OBS with my speakers as the default thing to listen through. Default audio device. So only the whoosh and only the whoosh is coming through the speakers. I was like, why does that sound so weird? I kind of like it, though. It sounds far away for me. I could just hit that button and, like, off to the left, 6 feet from me, there's a whoosh. It's like surround sound. All right, but we have a Korean PvP here, and that means I expect to see at least one 3-gate robo per game. We're not seeing any proxies out on the map, which tells us Firefly's not in this game. Although Korean players are very adept at doing that as well. But more often, I see the Korean players just 3-gate robo back at home. It does look like Stats is positioning to defend a Nexus, and this kind of makes sense, right? Stats, he's the defensive macro player of these two. And Nightmare, quite good at defensive macro play in the other matchups, and I'm sure he can do it here in PvP. But if he sees this low ground pylon, I feel like, you know, part of me wonders if Nightmare wants to drop a robo and a 3rd gateway and just go for it. But it looks like Nightmare is going to expand as well. It looks like we might have a natural base on both sides here, as Nightmare is sending out his 2 adepts, trying to get across the map. The Stalkers were trying to intercept, it looks like, but they have to be careful. They have to get home to defend these adepts if the adepts do decide to try to sneak through. And yeah, the expand on both sides. So this isn't that crazy. I kind of joke about seeing a 3-gate robo every single game in PvP, Korean PvP in particular. But there was a while where that kind of fell out of fashion and we saw less of them, saw more expansion builds. So I think a lot of the players got more comfortable in macro PvPs. And now, I don't know, it's kind of a mixed bag. We still get quite a few 3-gate robos, quite a few aggressive plays out of the Korean Protosses. But with Stats being such a solid and strong defensive player, I wonder if Nightmare's like, you know what, I'm not going to try to bust them with the 3-gate robo in game 1. Let's macro it out. Maybe game 2. Now, Stats went for a Stargate opener, and, well, this is going to work out decently for him as he's going to chase these adepts. Should be able to grab one. I like that Nightmare turn this one around, and actually the Oracle doesn't finish off that adept. But I guess since they both finished their shade, they might end up dying anyways. The Stalker's looking for them. Can they get there in time? I think the answer is no. Nightmare's going to be able to keep both of these alive. Because this Oracle, I guess it is gaining energy again. I don't think it's going to have enough to actually kill these, though. Stalkers have found them, though. They're catching up. One does go down. But, oh, my God, there's 6 more on the other side of the map, and there's no wall here for Nightmare. Now, another Adept is about, or another Oracle, rather, is about to finish, but this is 4 Adepts in the main, 2 in the natural. Nightmare is getting crazy amounts of damage done. These 2 on the low ground need to target fire specifically, but on the high ground, so many probes going down. The low ground Adepts got maybe 3 or 4, I think, before they stopped targeting individual probes. But that is 14 kills. And Nightmare, this isn't some cheeky one base play. He's got his own Nexus perfectly saturated back at home. He's just ahead. That many workers that he killed, and now Stats has to get comparable damage. All Nightmare has to do is defend here, and this is beautiful Stalker positioning. I don't like that he doesn't have a shield battery in this mineral line. There's one at least near these guys, but these probes feeling a little bit exposed just in case Nightmare does miss a little step. Stats would absolutely be able to kill a bunch of probes if there was an opening for just a couple of seconds. But Nightmare, he doesn't have to worry about it. He deflects those oracles, gets them out of there, and now Stats, I mean, he is just so far behind. It's going to take him forever. He's chrono boosting probes out and trying desperately to get that probe count back up, but he's still only at 31. Nightmare is hitting full full 2-base saturation at 44 probes. Numbers they're a little hard sometimes. And Stats is just lagging so far behind. No gases down at the natural, so Stats is a bit limited on what tech he can go for. It looks like he's just going to try to pump out a couple of Immortals. And I wonder if Stats is going to just go for an attack here. That's the thing about PvP is sometimes you can just attack your opponent, and even if you're kind of behind, it can kind of work. PvP is kind of weird. And Nightmare, he's got Blink. Blink is finished up. And Blink Stalkers, I mean, they can be pretty damn good against Immortals. This is kind of worrying me here for Stats. He's just going for a third Immortal. He's skipping Blink entirely and just pumping out Immortals instead. There's not even a Twilight Council here. And it looks like Stats is just going to hard macro his way out of this. I think if Nightmare realizes it, and I don't know that he quite has an idea of what his opponent's doing. I think if Nightmare realizes this, he should bring his Stalkers over here and poke and prod at this army with the Stalkers. He could for sure pick off maybe some of these Zealots, maybe a Stalker, maybe if Stats is a little bit lazy, an Immortal. And yeah, he's going to spot these Immortals here. He's going to try to check out the main base. Stats is going for a Prism, so maybe he is going to try to move out. This feels dangerous, but Nightmare not out on the map with these Stalkers, so this is where Stalkers excel. Blink Stalkers are so good at poking and prodding at an army as they move across the map. These Stalkers from Nightmare could absolutely have killed 1, 2, 3 of these Stalkers of Stats before this happened. But now, Nightmare's all the way back at home defending. He's got 3 Stalkers trapped. Excuse me, he's got 7 Stalkers trapped in Stasis Wards. And Stats is just going to try to push his way forward into this with these Stalkers unavailable for Nightmare to use. Force Field's going down on both sides. Of course, Nightmare does have Blink, and he has these Stalkers about to come out of this Stasis Trap and help out in the fight. A Super Shield Battery turns on as well, but Stats is just moving forward anyways, hoping the superior firepower of these Immortals is enough. The Stalkers on the low ground have been unfrozen as well. One of the Oracles is going to fall. Nightmare, he's got a full 360 surround. This Prism wants to be fancy, but it's going to get fancily killed, and Stats doesn't have any reinforcements. Are the 3 Immortals just going to push through, though? It's only Stalkers left. Nightmare is blinking as much as he can, and it looks like that is going to be enough. Stats just walking into the Lion's Den. Despite some good Stasis Wards, they do not last forever, and the shield batteries holding on so those Stalkers can come back into the fight. The Blink being so insanely cost efficient there for Nightmare. And I think Stats was just, he was put in an impossible position by those Adepts killing so many probes. And he was trying to figure out, how do I get out of this? What is the play? I think he was hoping Nightmare would get a little bit too greedy after that. There can be this sense of, okay, I'm ahead. I'm going to expand. I'm going to tech. I'm going to tech more. I'm going to try to build units. And all of a sudden you find yourself in this position where you spent all your money on tech and expansions, and Stats spent all his money on units right now and could just walk across the map and kill you. Nightmare, though, he was not resting on his laurels. He put down a bunch of shield batteries. He warped in a couple extra rounds of Stalkers. Didn't over-tech. Didn't overdo it. Just did what Artosis said. He got more ahead, then he defended his base. He took the expand and he defensed it. The little Artosis and White Ra combo advice there. Now let's hop in to game number 2. Where this time in the red trunks. Spawning in the upper left-hand corner, it is Nightmare. So they swapped positions, but the colors stayed in the same relative positions as last game. And in the lower right-hand corner, in the blue trunks, it's Stats. All right, so now we keep an eye out for what Nightmare wants to do, how he wants to handle this game 2 against Stats. Apparently, thank you to Thorn for posting this. Stats actually beat Nightmare 3-1 in the IEM qualifier. I had not realized that. I unfortunately didn't get to cover any of those. Ooh, excuse me, kicking the microphone. Didn't get to cover any of the IEM qualifiers, and I watched a bit of them, but not a ton. Didn't realize Stats was able to overcome Nightmare's PvP. That is the thing. No matter how good at this matchup you are, it's such a volatile matchup. And, I mean, Stats is a very good player. Even coming back from his military service, not looking quite the 100% the player he was before he left. One of the best Protosses in the world. He's still a very strong player. He has very good instincts. Good star sense, if you will. And especially in a volatile matchup like this, things can happen. Another double stalker opening here for Stats. This time, though, Nightmare not going for the 8 Adept. Didn't really get to talk about that too much while it was happening until the Adepts just shaded right into the base. So focused on those 2 Adepts getting caught in the middle of the map that the other 6 just kind of snuck up on us. But we see the power of the 8 Adept play, and, you know, a bit of a missed opportunity there. Stats not able to get the wall off into the main base, but even if he had put down a pylon, I think the 4 Adepts just chew through that very quickly. Maybe he saves a couple of probes with a pylon there. But it also goes to show a really important part of the Oracle opening, which doesn't look like we're going to see a Stargate this game, at least out of Stats. But a big part of the Oracle opening is scouting. Oracles are excellent at scouting. They can pop in, they can get a revelation, or even just they can just get in and see everything because they're flying units, right? But last game, those Oracles didn't scout at all. They actually didn't make it to Nightmare's side of the map for a while. They were too busy fudging around with those Adepts. And we see how important scouting is. Scouting turns out pretty good in StarCraft. I don't know if you guys knew. It's really good, a really useful thing in this game. Now, an important thing to scout here for these players is that the other one expanded. Neither of them have confirmed that yet, but those low ground pylons are pretty telling. The Stalker positioning for Nightmare was pretty telling, and Stats is going to be able to see, well, doesn't see the Nexus still, but I feel like those low ground units are confirmation of their own. It's just a Twilight Council in the main base. So it's going to be very clear to both players what is happening here. I do wonder if Stats won bases in this matchup. I have to imagine he 3-gate robos occasionally. I think you have to. And a big part of the power of those one-base plays isn't just that they're good. Obviously, they're very good. They're hard to defend if you're trying to expand and take 2 bases. Some players can do it. Max Pax, very famously, can do that often. But even then, like, he's not perfect with it. But the big power of it is getting into your opponent's head, right? And if both players know the other one has this possibility at hand, you always have to be prepared for it. And that can put you in a position where you're half defending just in case it's happening. Whereas if Stats just expands every time, Nightmare doesn't even have to half defend, right? That's why you need variety in your play in StarCraft for these best of series when you're playing competitive StarCraft. You have to have variety. You can't just be a one-trick pony. Otherwise, defending against your attacks or, you know, finding the weakness in your play becomes very easy if you can only really do one thing. Now, this game, just kind of trucking along here. Stats has Immortals coming out as he's chrono boosting Blink. Nightmare's Blink is quite a bit earlier. It's done already, but his Robo is so much later that he's not going to have any Immortals out for a while. The Immortals are... They can be quite strong. As we saw last game, those Immortals were doing very well. But they can also be a big weak spot in the army. They're kind of like the part of the army, if you're playing like a Zelda game and your enemy has like a big eye, it might take you a few extra hits to like do damage to the eye. Oh my god, hold on. Hold the phone here. Nightmare just walking up that ramp. The force field not stopping him at all, and Stats trying to take this fight without Blink, but force field's going down, cutting his whole army in half. That being said, Nightmare lost quite a bit there too, trying to fight against these Immortals. Warp Prism coming out for Stats. Both players tried to go for an attack there. I'm trying to make an analogy to Zelda bosses. But Nightmare not able to get on top of those Immortals. And now that he's lost so many Stalkers, I don't think he can kill them nearly as easily. Stats is going to dive in. He's going to take down the shield battery. Probe's coming off the line. It's going to buy Nightmare a little bit of time. The Immortal's getting hit, but the Prism is here to try to save them. Prism takes some damage as well, but that's a lot of Stalker shots not on the Stalkers and Immortals of Stats. Stats decides, I'm just going to step back and try to go for this Nexus, force Nightmare out from his little hidey hole with the shield batteries. One Immortal goes down, Stats loses it, but he takes out Nightmares as well. Both players have Blink to utilize. Both players warping in a couple more units. Stats is ahead in army supply, but it's not by much right now, and that Prism is representing some of it as well. The Nexus is taking a lot of damage. Nightmare's going to try to come out and save it. He gets the Warp Prism. That's huge. That means no close warp-ins here for Stats, and that warp-in round is about ready, but is that going to be enough? The Immortal gets targeted. That's going to allow Stats to trade favorably with the Stalkers. He's going to try to just take down the Nexus, and he will get it with that last volley, and then he's going to take a little bit of a fight here, just try to trade as efficiently as possible. Stats is so far ahead after this. It doesn't look like it out on the field here. These armies look very similar in size, but Stats has Stalkers at home. He has an Immortal about to pop at home. All he has to do is trade decently with these Stalkers on this side of the map. Maybe he can get a couple of them out of there. He's taken the base down. The army supply is 30 to 10. That is just not where Nightmare needs to be. And actually, Stats bringing a few Stalkers out here. He's going to be doing the chasing now, sending Nightmare back. Nightmare is in dire straits. And by that, I mean, kind of I just wanted to say dire straits because it's a good band, and I think that's a fun thing to say. Nightmare is dead. He's honestly, I think, even more dead than Stats was when Stats lost 14 probes last game, which was pretty dead. I think Nightmare's even more dead here. 2 bases to 3. Nightmare is way down on army supply. He has a tech disadvantage as we see a Forge coming up and Charge on the way for Stats, as well as these 2 Immortals out. Nightmare is just on Blink Stalkers. And he even has... Okay, it's the same exact amount of Blink Stalkers. I was going to say he has less. It's the exact same amount of Blink Stalkers, except Stats has an entire army with those Blink Stalkers. And Nightmare does not. Ooh, nice dodge on Stats' Stalker shots there as Nightmare escapes with, looks like all these Stalkers alive. Ooh, hold the phone. One less Stalker alive. The corpse of that Stalker floats by our camera. Stats just picking off a couple of Stalkers as Nightmare tries to go home, but I think Stats has realized he can just kill him now. He's got the Warp Prism here. He has a bunch of charge lots, which these Stalkers are checking out, but they can't really do anything against them. Nightmare's Zealots do not have charge. I think these Zealots are trying to do a run-by, but it's going to end up just being a flank on this army. I'll be honest, it does not matter either way. This is going to be more than enough for Stats to take this down. The Immortal's going to get saved by the Warp Prism, and Nightmare is going to be forced to GG as Stats ties us up 1-1. Turns out those early immortals really coming into play. What I was trying to say is sometimes if it's Blinkstalker versus Blinkstalker, but one player has an immortal or two, they can be focused down and killed. And all of that power that they have suddenly becomes a big void in the army. They can end up feeling like a weak spot. That was not the case in this game. That's not how that happened in that game. In that game, Stats had the same amount of Stalkers, but also 2 Immortals, which meant that even when one of the Immortals did get focused down very deliberately, that just meant all those Stalkers did extra damage in the meantime. It was like it's like a red herring or something. Distraction technique. With only 2 bases, Nightmare has money for nothing. Senju, I really appreciate that joke. Thank you so much for that. I was trying to think up a Dire Straits joke, but at 1:30 in the morning, I'm just a little too tired for my brain to function at that level. So I'm glad that I can count on chat for it. I appreciate you. Game number 3 is going to be on Hecate. And spawning in the lower left-hand corner, we have Nightmare. In the red. His opponent in the upper right, it is none other than the Stats Man himself. Do we have any stats lulls in the chats? I miss those stats emotes. Maybe we can get stats back to streaming. Although, Koreans can't stream on Twitch anymore, which is just awful. I hate that. It's absolutely brutal for StarCraft specifically. I wish Afrika was a good streaming service. I really wish they could compete with Twitch in any way, shape, or form. But man, they are just not. They just don't have it right now. I wish they did. I would watch more stuff on Afrika, I think, if it felt good. But I don't know, it's a hard thing. The StarCraft community is so ingrained on Twitch. I mean, the website literally started with StarCraft. That was one of the core games in the beginning of Justin TV. And so it feels like we're such a part of it. There's such a community feeling in the StarCraft community on Twitch. Now I'm noticing Nightmare. I guess this is just the second pylon up here. Oh no, it is the third pylon. The second pylon's out here. That timing feels weird. And Stats also putting his third pylon in the main base, very particularly next to these 2 gateways, a reinforcement pylon. Stats knows the best way to support an Artosis pylon is to have a Tasteless pylon next to it. It's just how it works. An Artosis pylon without its Tasteless pylon, well, just waiting to die, really. Nightmare did open up with a couple of Adepts again. He's going to try to sneak in, get his way in there. But this time, Nightmare, he's got the Robo on the way. Which means he's going to be putting down another gateway soon as well. The good old 3-gate Robo, the absolute classic build. And Stats is instead going for 1 base Blink. So he's going to have 3-gate Blink Stalkers. Now that's going to give Stats a lot more versatility and utility with these Stalkers. Nightmare will be able to have Prism Micro, and Warp Prism Micro can be really, really good. I'm not seeing the 3rd gate. Is he doing a 2-gate Robo variety? Is this gonna be with an expansion? Is that what's happening here? It is. Ooh, Nightmare. That's cute. I like that. I wonder if it's because of what he's scouted. Now he's gonna get in and get the confirmation scout. This is a beautiful hallucinated Phoenix out of Nightmare. to see exactly what he's up against. He's going to see that Stats accidentally full-walled himself in. Stats is going to have to kill that shield battery, a bit unfortunate. But more importantly, he sees the Twilight Council, he sees the Stalkers, he knows what he's up against. It's one base Blink Stalker. The Nightmare is going to try to hold the low ground here. I feel like Nightmare's plan might have been to try to harass with like an Immortal drop or something. But that is not going to be able to happen here. Nightmare, we're going to see him. He's not even going to try to go take this out. He knows those Stalkers are coming. Blink's about to finish. He is just putting down shield batteries, trying to get his defensive position ready to go. The Adept shade out, but I don't think they spotted these Stalkers. They will finish that shade and go head across the map. They're going to try to distract Stats, and maybe they can get some probe kills as Stats tries to bust his way in. Nightmare accidentally does a bunch of damage to his Stalker. I think that was full hit points before he did that. Nearly killed his own Stalker. Stats is bringing everything home and expanding. Okay, wow. So Nightmare, he's got to be feeling confused right now. Now is like the Stalkers should be poking back in. The Adepts don't see them. Where are they? What is doing? What is doing? Stats is just giving up this pylon and gateway. Okay, but Stats is coming back across the map now. He's got 3 sentries with him. That's what he really needed. The 3 sentries were the crucial missing part of this fight. His army's so disjointed right now. I mean, fortunately for him, Nightmare is not moving out on the map at all or trying to be cheeky with this at all. He was even going to go for the 2 Adept drop, but decided against it, seeing those Stalkers in the middle of the map. Stats is just moving around back and forth, but Nightmare doesn't realize that there's a Nexus on the way. He must know by now that there's a base. I mean, he's building probes, but I feel like not moving out with those Adepts might have been a bad choice. I think there's a really good chance that Prism's able to get in here. Obviously, having the Prism back at home for Micro is extremely important. Which is why he didn't want to move out. It's not that he would miss the Adepts, it's that he would miss the War Prism. Stalkers were thinking about trying to blink in, but the Immortal says no. And Nightmare starts up his own blink. Well, we just got a macro game on our hands. I'm surprised Nightmare hasn't tried to move out and kill this pylon yet. But I guess he's not too worried about it for the time being. Stats is going straight for a Robo Bay. I definitely would have expected Stats to be going for charge off the back of this, as I feel like that could be pretty decent against somebody who's on mostly Immortals with a late blink. Definitely going to be able to get that charge up very quickly. But Disruptor Novas can also be really good against this. The Prism can only hold so much. Nightmare is going to have to be really on it with that pickup Micro, as he will finally take this Gateway and Pylon out. Finally take the close proximity Gateway and Pylon. First Disruptor on the way. You know, I haven't seen Blink Ruptor versus Blink Ruptor in a long time. I really miss that style. I wonder, I mean, I guess a big part of the reason why I don't see it very often is I watch Korean PvPs more than anything else. And that's usually just one base play. But I wonder if that still happens like in Europe. I'm sure European PvPs get that more often, where there's more macro games. I feel like it's less common, though. I feel like I've seen more charge lot based follow-ups to the Blink Stalkers. Whereas it used to be you just kept building Blink Stalkers, and then at some point you tried to tech into Disruptors, and a lot of times both players would get there. I miss that. I really do. I feel like Blink Stalker Disruptor was such a fun little style. And we are seeing that out of stats. I mean, I think the disruptors are here because his Nexus was so late. So he's trying to kind of make up for lost time. Nightmare has all this robo time. He's got 5 Immortals out to the 2 of stats. The army supplies, though, are the same. And it really comes down to those 2 disruptors. So we're going to have to see how those disruptors do. Nightmare, I don't know if he realizes that there are disruptors here. I feel like he scouted the Robo Bay, so he should know that there's likely disruptors. And yeah, he's not going to push in. Stats, he's holding on. He is still down in workers. His third base is a good bit later than Nightmare's, which kind of tracks because his natural Nexus was a good bit later as well. So income-wise, I mean, Nightmare had a nice little bump here. He's going to have an even better bump here, which stats should close back down a little bit here soon. But Nightmare's going into his own disruptors. We are getting Blinkstalker Disruptor versus Blinkstalker Disruptor. It's just what I asked for. Oh my god, it's like my birthday. Nightmare is getting charge as well, though, and I think this is a good call. Charge lots can be useful in the army. They can also just be good in like run bys, or if you have a warp prism and you're warping in a bunch of charge lots, they can be super annoying to deal with. Stats is trying to push out right now. He blinks forward. Some force fields come down out of Nightmare, but the disruptors come up. They are gonna, oh no, oh, they're gonna die as Nightmare gets 1 disruptor Nova connection, and that is just GG. Nightmare brings in the disruptor from the side and just kablooies everything Stats had. All his hopes and dreams. He had 4 disruptors just there ready to be annoying and poke up that ramp and try to get some kills on some of those units. And they just died. They just absolutely died. Damn. What an ending to that game. Explosive ending. And Stats just taps out pretty much immediately. Which is kind of what you expect. So Nightmare will be the one moving on.